children. Now we're going to have a little music. Like old times. Like old times. So, now I'll start the melody on the organ. Oldie but a goodie. That's just plain poppycock.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Good Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by SuperFantasyBrothers.com. I'm your host, CJ Nutter, today, joined by my co-host, Brian Stein. Brian, you want to say hello?
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys. Thanks again for listening to episode 2, again, of the Good Fantasy Football Podcast. Please be sure to support the pod by rating or subscribing to us on whatever website you listen to us on. We're available on Spreaker, iTunes, Google Play, you name it, you can find us on it. So, again, anything you do to support the pod, you can also on SuperFantasyBros.com. We have a contact us form on there. If you have any feedback or questions that you want to provide to us, we'd be more than happy to listen to your thoughts. So, again, at SuperFantasyBros.com, use the contact us form to reach out to us and give us a shout out and let us know how we're doing. So, Brian, it's been an interesting week for me on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen some of my mentions lately, but I've been taking some heat. First, last week, so as some of you may know, I participate in both Dynasty and Redraft. But last week I made a trade in one of our Dynasty leagues, and I posted on they have what's called a Dynasty Trades Twitter, where you give hashtag Dynasty Trades. They'll retweet you and allow people to give your feedback. So I made a trade, Brian. I traded away a 2017 first rounder, which if you ask some Dynasty players, apparently may or may not withhold the second coming of Christ. It's up for debate depending on how people actually value those. But I traded away a 2017 first rounder, and I got Tajae Sharpe. Now, the results came back. 80% picked the 2017 first rounder in the poll, and only 20% picked Tajae Sharpe. So the overwhelming majority of Dynasty players seem to think that I pretty much got my butt whooped in that trade. Brian, what were your thoughts on the trade? Do you think it was that bad?
It definitely wasn't an 80-20 split, that's for sure. People are looking at these 17-round firsts like they're gold, like they're going to hit every single one of them. And that's just not the case. When you do some stats and you're looking back, you really only see about 50% of first rounders hit. And we consider a hit to be a top 24 season at their position just once. So if only half of your first round picks, historically are doing that, it's okay to sell for somebody who's trending upwards like Tajae Sharpe.
Yeah, that's what I thought was kind of funny, because Tajae Sharpe has pretty much everything you want from a young wide receiver. He's a young prospect. We kind of talked about that in our last pod, how I prefer a prospect that's young coming out of college. The guy is only 21. He's 21, and he has the looks of being a young stud quarterback's number one target. He's already gained the trust of Marcus Mariota. If you look at the guy's blurbs on Roto World, all you're going to see is good stuff. He's absolutely torn up the preseason, and I understand he was a 5th round pick in the NFL, but you have to remember when you look at investing in late round picks, usually the biggest obstacle they have is climbing up the depth chart, and Tajae Sharpe is already looking like he's the number one target in Tennessee. He's already gotten past the biggest obstacle that there really is for late round picks, and he arguably is the reason why, by all indications, that Tennessee got rid of Dorial Green-Beckham, which we'll talk about more a little bit later. But like I said, this is a guy that Dynasty players should almost unequivocally be in love with, but it seems like people go, I'll take the complete unknown next year, and I think it's almost irrational, honestly.
Yeah.
And I could see why somebody may want the first pick, but the whole 80-20 thing, it's like, I don't know what people are looking for. I almost think that people will rather take the complete unknown rather than something they may think they understand, although I don't think anyone really. I think that Tajae Sharpe is showing a high ceiling, but again, I guess people would rather take the complete unknown rather than what they think they already understand.
Yeah, and I'm in the league with you, so I know your team, and you're going to be in the back half of that first round anyways. Some of those big names really are going to be gone. You're not going to get, unless your entire team gets hurt, that pick is not going to turn out to be Leonard Fournette or Dalvin Cook or McCafferty. You're not going to get any of those big name guys with that pick.
Right, and even all these guys, they all sound like surefire hits, but I mean, we have seen surefire hits miss before, so you never know. I actually wrote an article on superfantasybros.com even about Ezekiel Elliott, who everyone looks at as a sure thing, but once these guys get to the NFL, something I kind of talked about in my article is I think we really can't possibly grasp how difficult of a transition it is from college to NFL ball. Some of the more human elements you don't think about is these guys are moving to a completely different city. They're working with completely different people. They're moving to a new place, completely adjusting to a new atmosphere. And again, these are all human elements that we don't think about whenever we consider what these players are doing. And so when you factor in all of that, it's almost unreasonable to just expect them to come in, and be the very best at their position right after all these things are happening. So a lot of guys struggle in their rookie years. And again, I don't think it's completely unreasonable to expect a transition, if a rough transition even from college to the NFL ball.
Definitely. And I think it says a lot about Tajay Sharp that they traded away Doyle Green Beckham. I know we're going to talk about that more later in the pod. But at first we thought, they're just trying to motivate DGB. And here, they seem to really believe in Tajay Sharp.
They do. Again, he's pretty much gotten past the biggest obstacle that rookies have, and that's climbing up the depth chart. But I have more to say about that, but we're going to go back to that in a little bit. My licks on Twitter do continue, though. Then a couple days ago, I want to say Thursday night, I just made kind of an innocent tweet that actually ended up catching a lot of attention. I tweeted, hey, if you're in any of my dynasty leagues, don't bother checking the wire for Paul Richardson. I've owned him since the spring. Paul Richardson, for anyone that didn't know, he had a decent game. He ran with the ones. I think he actually got more snaps than Tyler Lockett. He had 3 targets, turned it into 19 yards and a touchdown. So I kind of made that innocent tweet, just kind of playing around like, hey, I have him. And then I got quoted by a Twitter account with about 20,000 followers. I'm not going to say what account it is, but all they said was, good luck with that. I'm like, okay, go for the cool quote tweet there. So I responded, and I said, yeah, guess I'm crazy for taking a free chance on a former second-round pick that plays with Russell Wilson. And I understand, Paul Richardson isn't a sexy pick, and that's honestly not what I meant it to be. But this might actually surprise you, Brian. I didn't know if you knew this, but Paul Richardson, he ran a 4.37 with his 40. And he was a second-round pick. He was drafted with the 45th overall pick, so there's capital invested in the guy. And he's actually, some people seem to think of him as just a return man, but he's actually very productive in college. He had a 20% career market share of his receiving yards. And his final year in school, he had 111 yards a game. He averaged about 0.8 touchdowns per game. He had a market share receiving yards of 47%. That's almost Tyler Boyd levels of productivity. And he did it against the strength of schedule that was about 83 on a 100% scale. Again, he actually, I used the prospect heat map or the box score scout on RotoViz to compare him with Tyler Lockett, and just the box score scout is agnostic to what the two receivers have done so far in their NFL careers, but it ranks them and thinks that Paul Richardson, just with those stats that I compared between the two, are actually they view it, Paul Richardson, as a superior prospect. Now, I'm not even saying by any means that Paul Richardson is superior to Tyler Lockett, because that's not what I'm saying at all. I just want to get that clear. All I was saying was by the tweet, and what maybe even this Twitter account was maybe missed, is I said, hey, I got this guy for free. He's a former second-round pick. He's playing with arguably the best quarterback in the game. Am I really crazy for taking that kind of logic, Brian? Or as crazy as this Twitter account's making me seem?
Oh no, definitely not, because you've got to look at it. I mean, when you're looking at it, a 4.37 40, he's got good measurables. He's 6 foot tall. He lines up with Tyler Lockett pretty similarly. It seems like they probably have a similar game, and people forget he was a second round pick not too long ago. He was muddled by injuries, but even if you take a player like this who doesn't maybe doesn't have much of a return, if you trade him for even a second round pick, you just got a second round pick for free.
What's really funny is after I sent that chart to that Twitter account, they proceeded to tell me college stats won't help you in NFL fantasy. Do you think he will be the fourth or fifth passing option, 30-man league? I really didn't know what to say to that. I said, I'm like, okay, yeah, like I feel like logic like that. I asked them. I said, okay, how do you evaluate wide receivers? I said, you don't factor college production into your evaluation. It gets better. He says, for fantasy, nah. Rather look at volume, situation, depth chart. 30-man league, I'd gladly take Richardson. So we keep bringing up this 30-man league. I guess that's supposed to be.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah. And again, I think what he's saying is really, I don't even know. So I'm not going to get into that. We kind of talked about this in the last pod, but we're so past, just this gut feeling, and I think this, blah blah blah. I don't want to get into that, and I feel like this is something that this Twitter account may be getting into. And again, I'm not going to name what it is, but really just looking at surface level. Oh, Tyler Lockett's higher on the depth chart. That's it. When you just look at things in plain sight, it's going to seem simple. Oh, Tyler Lockett will finish ahead of this guy. This guy's going to do here because he's the fourth wide receiver in the depth chart. The reason why I bring up stats from college, especially for someone like Paul Richardson, is there is a history of him being a good player. And Paul Richardson's been hurt. He got hurt in his rookie year. He got hurt last year. So when you look at, just look at things with plain sight and take them for what they are, that's a good way to miss out on players that may eventually break out or become valuable for your fantasy team. So what I told this jabroni, and what I'll say here really, is I'm not going out here and saying that Paul Richardson is going to be a wide receiver one for my team. I'm not even saying that he'll ever become something. All I was really trying to say by it is that, hey, this guy's a better prospect than I think we realize, and I think it's worth taking a shot on, especially for free. Again, I thought it was kind of silly that I got attacked for that, but hey, that's what Twitter's all for, right?
Yeah, it seemed like the guy thought that you were saying that he was going to outproduce like Julio Jones or something like that. Like all you were saying was, don't bother checking the waiver wire. He was on my radar before this breakout game in a preseason game.
Yeah, and I even said it was in Dynasty, but he kept talking about this 30-man league. I'm pretty sure he's never played in a Dynasty league before. He's
probably never played in a 30-man league either.
Yeah, we're just going to move on from that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Next up, I took one more lick this week. I thought it was a pretty good one.
You might have to retire from Twitter after this week, buddy.
Yeah, I might have to consider it. So me and Brian had our home league draft yesterday, and just as a tune-up, I knew what position I was in. So I went to fantasyfootballcalculator.com. I did a mock draft. Out of the 6th spot, which I drafted in our home league again, and I went 0 running back, and I took some heat from some people on there too. I started out the draft with 7 wide receivers, and that's usually 0 running back. You go about 6 rounds. So I took it more like an extra round, and I kept wondering. It was a very active chat, and the whole time I'm thinking, when am I going to catch their attention? Because I'm right in the middle. You just see like the same color just going straight down, and then a user by the name of Kirk Cousins. I don't know if it was the real Kirk Cousins. I hope not.
Kirk Cousins.
He just says Kirk Cousins. Starts off, LOL, 7 wide receivers, and that just brings them on. Then another user goes, what a effing tool, and then. Kirk Cousins chimes back in, 0 RB doesn't actually mean 0 RBs, buddy. Then one user was impressed. He said that was a total boss move. And then another user just chimes in as WTF. So I wasn't very popular with that group, and eventually I didn't get to include some other quibbits in there. Someone asked me if I was high. Another user asked me if I was drunk.